Ethan Vey never thought his small repair ship would fail him. He had patched broken engines, sealed leaking hulls, and kept old machines running for years. But space was unforgiving. One wrong calculation, one hidden crack in a fuel line, and everything could go wrong. That was exactly what happened. 3 days into his journey across the Orion trade route, his craft lost power. The lights dimmed, oxygen levels dropped, and Ethan knew his time was running out. He sent distress calls again and again, hoping some trader or patrol ship would hear him. When he was almost ready to accept his end, a ship answered. The vessel was sleek and massive, glowing with silver light as it cut through the darkness of space. It was not human. It belonged to the Lyrian Empire, a civilization known in human space for their tall, graceful people and their strict discipline. Their ships were works of art, smooth as blades, designed with beauty as much as function. Ethan had only heard about them in stories. And now one had come to rescue him. The Lyrians brought him aboard. They gave him oxygen, food, and a small cabin. The officers who spoke to him were polite but also cold. To them, he was just a stranded human, a guest until they reached the next station. Ethan didn't mind. He was just glad to be alive. His days aboard the Lyrian vessel were strange. The crew moved like dancers, every motion elegant and practiced. Their uniforms were spotless, their manners stiff. Ethan, on the other hand, was messy. His human boots scuffed the polished floors. His jokes earned raised eyebrows instead of laughs. More than once he overheard whispers when he passed. The human smells of oil and metal. How primitive. Why allow him aboard? But he ignored them. He had no choice but to wait until the ship reached port. The cabin they gave him was small but comfortable. The bed was soft, the walls smooth silver, the air clean. Still, Ethan found the place too cold. The ship's systems kept the temperature lower than human ships did. At night, the chill made it hard to sleep. He had been given only one thin blanket. On the fourth night, things grew worse. The heating unit in his cabin flickered and went out. The air grew colder and colder until his breath turned white in the dim light. Ethan rubbed his arms, pulled the blanket tight, but it wasn't enough. Perfect, he muttered, teeth chattering. Rescued by space elves and still freezing. He didn't want to bother the crew. They already treated him like an annoyance. Instead, he decided to solve it himself. He removed his clothes, thinking it would help the blanket trap his body heat better. He had done the same during cold survival training years ago. Wrapped tight, he finally managed to drift into sleep. When Ethan woke, something felt strange. The blanket was heavy, much heavier than before. Warmth pressed against his chest and a faint sound, soft breathing, filled his ears. His eyes blinked open. At first, he thought he was still dreaming. A figure lay on top of him, curled like a child seeking comfort. Her long silver hair spilled across his chest, her slender hands resting against him. She wore a gown of pale blue silk, glowing faintly in the low cabin light. It was not just anyone. It was the princess of the Lyrian Empire, Lyra herself. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. He had seen her once before, during a brief moment in the main hall. Surrounded by guards, she had walked past him without a glance, her presence commanding the respect of every officer aboard. She was the heir to one of the most powerful thrones in the galaxy, and now she was lying on his chest as if she belonged there. Ethan froze. He didn't dare move. His mind raced with questions. Why is she here? How did she even enter my cabin? What happens if someone sees this? The door had been locked. He was sure of it. But perhaps locks meant nothing to someone of her rank. Carefully, he tried to shift to wake her. But the moment he moved, her hand tightened on his shirtless chest. A soft sigh escaped her lips and she pressed closer as if afraid he might leave. Ethan swallowed hard. Great, just great. I'm a human stowaway pillow now. Minutes dragged by, his mind filled with fear. If any crew member walked in and saw this, what would they think? A human lying with the princess? That could mean death or worse. But he couldn't bring himself to shove her away. She looked peaceful. For someone who carried so much weight on her shoulders, she looked like she had finally found rest. Eventually, her eyes fluttered open. They were a striking shade of silver, glowing faintly in the dark. She blinked once, twice, then slowly realized where she was. Her cheeks flushed pale blue, a Lyrian sign of embarrassment. She quickly sat up, smoothing her gown. Ethan sat up too, clutching the blanket to his chest. Princess Lyra? This isn't what it looks like. Her voice was quiet, almost ashamed. I know. You know? She nodded, eyes lowered. Forgive me, I could not sleep. The terrors came again. Terrors? Lyra folded her hands tightly. Since childhood I have been haunted by visions in the night. No physician of my people can explain it. I wake in fear, my heart racing, unable to rest. But last night, for the first time, I slept without fear. Ethan blinked. Because you were here? Her gaze lifted to his. Because of you. Silence filled the cabin. Ethan's thoughts spun. This was insane. A princess sneaking into his cabin, using him as, what, a shield against nightmares? I don't understand, he said carefully. I'm just a mechanic. A human no one here even likes, why me? I do not know, she admitted, her voice trembling. But when I stood outside your cabin, I felt something. A warmth. I entered, and when I lay beside you, the terrors faded. Ethan rubbed his face. This was trouble, pure and simple. If the crew discovered this, it could cause a scandal. He would be blamed no matter what the truth was. Still, he looked at her and saw not just a princess, but a young woman desperate for rest. He sighed. All right. But this has to stay secret. If your people find out, I'm finished. Lyra gave the smallest of smiles. You would protect my secret? Even at risk to yourself? I don't really have a choice, do I? Ethan muttered. But deep inside, he knew he meant it. The following days changed everything. By day, Ethan lived as before. He ate alone, wandered the ship, and ignored the whispers of the crew. He kept to himself, fixing small things in his cabin with scraps of wire and tools they allowed him to keep. But at night, when the halls grew silent, Lyra came. Sometimes she sat in silence, listening to the hum of the ship. Other times she asked him questions about humans, about Earth, about the sea, about laughter, and sometimes, when her fears returned, she lay beside him, letting his presence calm her. It was strange. Ethan had never thought of himself as important, but to her in those moments he was. He did not notice at first, but the crew began to watch him more closely. When he entered the dining hall, conversations hushed. When he walked the corridors, eyes followed. One officer, tall and cold, stopped him one afternoon. Human. Why does the princess look at you with such calm eyes? Ethan forced a laugh. Maybe she just finds me funny. The officer did not laugh back. Ethan's stomach tightened. Secrets were hard to keep on a ship, and the secret he now carried was the most dangerous of all. But he had made a promise to protect her, even if it meant trouble for himself. And so the unlikely bond between a human mechanic and an alien princess began, hidden in the silence of the starship, a bond that would soon drag Ethan into dangers far greater than he could imagine. Days aboard the Lyrian ship passed slowly for Ethan. Each morning, he awoke in his small cabin, dressed quickly, and went about the routine tasks of cleaning, repairing minor systems, and observing the elegant, precise movements of the crew. Every officer he passed seemed to glide rather than walk, their voices soft but firm, giving orders without a hint of emotion. But every night was different. Princess Lyra continued to come to him after lights out. At first she would simply sit in the quiet corner of his cabin, staring at the stars through the small view panel. Occasionally she would ask questions about Earth, her voice soft and filled with curiosity. Humans are strange, she said one night, tilting her head. You make things work with your hands and your mind, not only your machines. I have watched your people from afar, but seeing you here, it is different, Ethan shrugged, trying to seem casual. We have to improvise. If we only follow rules, we wouldn't survive long out here. Lyra nodded slowly. I admire that. We Lyrian people, we follow rules. We obey orders, sometimes too much. It makes us strong, but also rigid. Ethan leaned back on the edge of his bed. Sounds like you'd rather be human then. She laughed softly, a delicate sound like wind through silver leaves. No, I could never be human, but I can learn from your ways, even a little. One evening as they spoke, Ethan noticed her hands trembling slightly. Her gaze fell to the floor and a shadow crossed her face. Princess? He asked gently. What's wrong? Lyra took a deep breath. I must show you. Before Ethan could respond, she closed her eyes and pressed her hands to her temples. Then, in her mind, she shared with him visions he had no way to fully understand. Ethan only saw fragments, flashes of light and sound, images that made his stomach tighten with unease. She was haunted. Every night, terrifying dreams gripped her. Dreams of darkness, of falling endlessly, of voices shouting orders she could not obey. Even though she was Lyrian, even though she had the best doctors and guards in the galaxy, nothing could stop them. But when I am with you, she whispered, opening her eyes again, it fades, your presence. It calms me, even if only a little. Ethan's heart thumped. He had never been needed like this before, not by a king, not by a friend, not even by a family member. And yet here he was, human and ordinary, holding the trust of an alien princess unlike anyone he had ever met. "I don't know why it works," he admitted, "but I'll help. Whatever I can do." The following night, Lyra came again. This time, she leaned closer to him, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. "Do not fear me," she said softly. "I do not ask for more than what you offer. Your company is enough." Ethan nodded. "Then we keep it quiet, right? No one can know." "Yes." Her voice was firm now, even though her eyes betrayed the lingering fear. "It must remain secret. If anyone discovered, they would not understand. They would see you as a threat, perhaps worse. You are not like us. They would never accept this." And that was true. The Lyrian Empire was strict. They followed rules without question. A human, messy, unpredictable, emotional, could never fit into their world, no matter how brave or clever he was. Ethan realized he was walking a tightrope. One wrong step and everything could collapse. During the day, Ethan noticed subtle changes among the crew. Officers who had previously ignored him now watched his movements. Some whispered in corners when he passed. Occasionally, Lyra's personal attendants cast him wary glances, as if they sensed the growing bond but could not explain it. One afternoon, while he repaired a small malfunction in the ship's communication array, a tall officer approached him. His uniform gleamed in the cabin light, his posture rigid as a spear. "Human," the officer said, voice calm but carrying authority. "Why do you spend so much time near the princess?" "She is not yours to comfort." Ethan straightened, wiping grease from his hands. "I am only helping her sleep. That's all." The officer studied him for a long moment. "Be careful. The Empire has many rules. Do not forget them." Ethan gave a nervous laugh. "Don't worry. I'm a human. Rules are more like suggestions." The officer's expression did not change, and he walked away, leaving Ethan with a sinking feeling. He knew that being close to Lyra was dangerous, but he could not abandon her, not now when she depended on him. Night came again, and with it Lyra's visit. She entered quietly, her movements light as shadows. Ethan could hear her breathing before he saw her, a soft rhythm that reminded him of calm waters on a still planet. "I tried not to come," she said, settling near the small window of his cabin. "I thought perhaps I could face the night alone." "And?" Ethan asked, "and I could not. The terrors came sooner than expected." She shivered slightly. "I do not know why I am like this. My people are strong, disciplined, perfect. But these dreams, they have been with me since I was a child." Ethan hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Maybe it's not weakness. Maybe it's just human. Everyone needs comfort, even the strongest, even the most perfect." Lyra's eyes softened. She turned to him, studying his face. "Your people, you are strange. You face fear, but you do not let it control you. You act even when the outcome is uncertain. That is, unlike us." Ethan shrugged, trying not to seem important. "We don't have a choice out here. Space doesn't care if you're strong or disciplined. It only cares if you survive. You do what you must." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is why I trust you. You do not claim to be perfect. You simply exist, and that is enough." Days turned into a week, and their nightly meetings continued. Ethan learned more about Lyra than he had ever imagined. She was not just a princess. She was a student of culture, of diplomacy, and of the art of leadership. But she was also young, curious, and deeply lonely. Her life was dictated by protocol, and her every action observed by advisors, guards, and nobles. Ethan began to admire her strength. Even with her fears, she moved with grace and intelligence. She listened carefully, spoke thoughtfully, and learned quickly. And yet, in the quiet moments beside him, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "I never tell anyone about this," she admitted one night, staring at the stars. "Even my closest advisors would never understand. They see vulnerability as weakness. But with you, it is safe." Ethan nodded. "I get it. And don't worry. I won't tell a soul. You are brave," she said softly. "And strange. Most humans would be frightened or overwhelmed or run away," Ethan added. "I've done that before. But this time, I can't." Their bond grew quietly, unnoticed by most of the ship. Only the closest officers, those who observed everything, began to whisper about the human mechanic and the princess. But even their gossip could not touch the truth. Then one night, the ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed and alarms filled the corridors. Ethan bolted upright, grabbing his toolkit instinctively. "What now?" he shouted. Lyra appeared at his side, pale but steady. "The outer shields are failing. Something, or someone is attacking." Ethan cursed under his breath. "Just my luck. First I survive a broken ship, now I'm in the middle of a battle I didn't ask for." Together they ran to the control hub. Ethan's hands moved quickly over panels he had never seen before, improvising repairs and rerouting power with instructions from the officers. Lyra stayed close, offering calm guidance, giving commands to the crew in her clear, precise voice. "Human, focus on the auxiliary lines," she said. "I will handle communications." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. He had never worked with such precision before. The ship was alive with energy, alarms flashing, lights flickering, and yet somehow, through chaos, they worked together. For the first time, Ethan realized that the bond he shared with Lyra was not just comfort, it was survival. "Keep those lines stable," Lyra shouted, pointing at a console. "If they fail, the shields collapse." Ethan's fingers flew over the panels. Sparks flew, smoke hissed. He cursed and adapted, rerouting energy, improvising, doing what he had learned in years of human engineering. By the time the alarms finally ceased, the ship was damaged but alive. Ethan slumped into a chair, breathing hard. Lyra approached, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You were remarkable," she said softly. "If not for you, we would not have survived." Ethan shook his head, embarrassed. "I was just lucky." "No," Lyra said firmly. "Humans have a gift. You act when others hesitate. You think when others panic. That is why I trust you. That is why I came to you in the first place." Ethan's stomach tightened. He had always known humans were capable, but hearing it from a princess, someone so different and powerful, made him realize something profound. Perhaps humans truly were extraordinary, and perhaps he had found a place where he mattered, somewhere beyond survival, beyond being just a mechanic, beyond being a human in an alien world. The days after the attack were tense. Ethan had earned a measure of respect from the crew, not because they admired him fully, but because he had proven himself capable in a crisis. Even so, whispers followed him through the gleaming corridors of the Lyrian ship. Eyes followed him, some with suspicion, others with curiosity. Princess Lyra remained by his side during quiet moments. The bond between them, fragile yet profound, had grown stronger. They shared stories of their worlds, of dreams and hopes. But there was an unspoken tension lingering. The Lyrian Empire was vast and complex, and outsiders were never fully trusted. One afternoon, while Ethan was repairing a minor malfunction in the life support system, Lyra approached him. Her steps were deliberate, measured, as if each movement had a purpose beyond simply walking. "Ethan," she said quietly, her voice low so no one could overhear, "I must speak with you. Alone." Ethan nodded, wiping grease from his hands. "Sure, my cabin?" Lyra shook her head. "Too risky. Meet me in the observation deck. No one watches there." Ethan followed her through the corridors, the metallic hum of the ship beneath their feet filling the silence. The observation deck was a large room at the front of the vessel, walls of transparent alloy providing an uninterrupted view of the stars. No one came here unless summoned, and even then only for important matters. Lyra turned to him, her expression serious. "Ethan, there is more at stake than you realize. The attack was not random. Someone within the Empire wishes to harm me." Ethan froze. "Harm you? How? Who?" Her silver eyes glimmered with a mixture of fear and resolve. "I do not know all the details yet, but I have sensed treachery among the nobles. They resent my position, my youth, my rule. They will use anyone, any force to remove me from power." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "And the attack on the ship was them?" Lyra nodded. "Part of it. We were fortunate the systems did not fail entirely, but this is only the beginning. Soon they will strike again, perhaps more directly." Ethan's mind raced. He had thought his role on the ship was minor, a mechanic and temporary passenger. Now it seemed he was at the center of a storm that could engulf the entire empire. "Why me?" he asked finally. "I'm just human. I don't have political influence. I don't know your laws or your culture well enough to help with this." Lyra stepped closer, her gaze steady. "That is precisely why I trust you. Humans see differently. You act without fear of protocol. You are not bound by the same rules that chain my officers. You are unpredictable yet capable. That is why I asked you to help me survive the attack and why I will continue to need your aid." Ethan's heart thumped. He had never been trusted like this. Not by a teacher, a leader, or a comrade. And now, he was entrusted with the life of a princess, someone whose influence and power could decide the fate of countless worlds. Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyra worked in secret. By day, they maintained the appearance of ordinary routines, blending into the background as the ship continued its journey. By night, they met in hidden corners, planning, strategizing, and training for potential threats. Lyra's advisors were skilled but rigid. They followed doctrine to the letter, calculating every move with precision. Ethan, however, approached problems differently. When the ship's navigation system suffered intermittent failures, he improvised, combining human ingenuity with the limited resources available. Try rerouting power through the auxiliary grid, Ethan suggested one night, crouched over a console. It's not standard procedure, but it might stabilize the core long enough to escape an attack. Lyra studied the panels following his instructions. It is unorthodox, but it could work. The lights flickered, the hum of the engines grew unstable, but Ethan worked with steady hands, sweat beading on his forehead. Moments later, the system stabilized. The hum returned to a normal tone and the threat passed, at least for now. You saved us again, Lyra whispered, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. You act when others hesitate. I have never seen such courage. Ethan shook his head, smiling wryly. I'm not a hero, just lucky and stubborn. You are more than that, she insisted. But not everyone admired Ethan's efforts. One afternoon, while walking through the crew quarters, he overheard whispers. Officers spoke in low tones, glances sharp and suspicious. The human is meddling where he does not belong, one said. Do you think the princess favors him? Another whispered. Be careful. The council would never accept it. A human, influencing the air. Dangerous, Ethan's stomach tightened. The closer he became to Lyra, the more he realized how precarious his position was. Any misstep, any perceived betrayal could have disastrous consequences. He confided in Lyra that night. I think they're watching me. I don't belong here. One mistake and, she interrupted him gently. You belong here because you are needed, not because of your species or your status or what the nobles think. You belong here because you act when others cannot. That is what matters. Ethan sighed, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. I hope you're right. I am, she said firmly. Tensions escalated when the ship received an encrypted message from the Empire's capital. The message was short, urgent, and cryptic. Princess Lyra, trust none. Shadows move within. A faction seeks to remove you from power. Immediate caution required. Advisor Carol, Lyra's expression darkened. They know, she whispered. They suspect something? The council is divided. I must be careful who I trust. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we keep moving. We stay ahead, we adapt. Humans survive in the chaos. Maybe that can help you too. Lyra nodded. Yes, but we must be cautious. Even the smallest misstep could bring disaster. That evening, as the stars streaked past the observation deck, Lyra shared more about her people and the dangers she faced. My world is not as simple as humans imagine, she said. We Lyrian are disciplined, proud, and precise. But beneath the surface there are currents of ambition, jealousy, and desire for power. Some would see me fall for their gain. And now you are part of this. I did not want it, but it cannot be avoided, Ethan swallowed. I don't like it either, but I'll face it with you. You're not alone in this. Her eyes softened. I know, that is why I came to you. You are different, strong in ways my people often overlook, and you do not judge me for being afraid. He smiled faintly. Everyone's afraid sometimes. Doesn't matter if you're a princess or a mechanic. Lyra leaned closer. Exactly. And perhaps that is why I trust you more than anyone else here. The next challenge came suddenly. A fleet of unknown raiders appeared on sensors, moving swiftly toward the ship. They were fast, organized, and heavily armed. The alarms blared and the crew scrambled into action. Ethan and Lyra rushed to the control hub. We need to stabilize the shields, Lyra commanded. Her voice steady despite the chaos. Ethan worked quickly, rerouting power, repairing damaged circuits, and improvising solutions to keep the ship alive. His hands flew over the panels, sweat dripping onto the consoles. Sparks flew, alarms shrieked, and the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Human, adjust the thrusters. Divert power to the forward shields, Lyra shouted, issuing orders like a seasoned commander. Ethan followed, improvising as he went. He had never piloted a ship like this, but his instincts told him what to do. He learned quickly, adapting to the alien controls, thinking like a human, acting like a hero. The enemy fleet pressed closer, but the ship held. Ethan's quick thinking and Lyra's precise commands kept them alive. The crew began to notice. Whispers of admiration replaced suspicion, though some remained cautious. When the threat finally passed, the control hub was filled with silence, save for the hum of the engines. Ethan leaned back exhausted. Lyra approached, placing her hand on his shoulder once more. You were remarkable, she said softly. Without you, we would not have survived this encounter. You act when others freeze. That is why I trust you. Ethan shook his head, smiling wearily. He's just a human doing what a human does. But thanks, Princess. That means a lot. Lyra's gaze held his. It means more than you realize. You are part of this now, Ethan. Part of my world. Part of my fight. And perhaps something more. As the stars stretched endlessly outside the observation window, Ethan realized he was no longer just a stranded mechanic aboard an alien ship. He was a participant in something far greater, a battle of survival, loyalty, and trust. The human way, unpredictable and daring, had earned him a place beside a princess, and that place he knew would soon demand more courage than he had ever known. He took a deep breath. He was ready. The ship felt different now. Every corridor, every chamber carried a tension Ethan had never noticed before. Officers walked with sharper eyes, whispering in corners, their steps measured and careful. Even the hum of the engines seemed quieter, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. The last attack had been an external threat, and the crew had survived it. But the next danger was closer, invisible, and far more dangerous. A traitor inside the ship. Ethan first realized something was wrong when he noticed small anomalies in the systems. Life support fluctuated without cause. Doors locked unexpectedly. Minor alarms sounded and then stopped. At first he thought it was a glitch. Machines broke down sometimes. But the pattern was too deliberate, too precise. Someone was sabotaging the ship. He mentioned it quietly to Lyra during one of their nightly meetings. Princess, something's happening aboard the ship. These malfunctions, they're not accidents. Lyra's eyes narrowed. I feared as much. I have noticed unusual behavior among some officers. They move differently when we are near. I suspect a faction is conspiring against me. Ethan swallowed hard. So, they could strike at any moment. Yes, she said softly, placing her hand on his arm. That is why I need you to stay vigilant. Your human intuition, it may be our only advantage. Over the next few days, Ethan patrolled the ship quietly. He examined the life support, engines, and auxiliary systems, noting unusual energy flows, tiny inconsistencies, and doors that did not respond to commands. His human way of observing, of improvising, allowed him to see patterns that the Lyrian officers, bound by rules, might miss. One evening, he traced a power fluctuation to a maintenance hatch in the lower decks. Carefully, he opened it, only to find a small device wired into the ship's main conduit. Sparks danced along its edges, threatening to fry the circuits. Ethan's mind raced. This is bad, he muttered to himself. If this goes off, the ship could be crippled. He worked carefully, using tools from his kit to disconnect the device without triggering it. Sweat beaded his forehead as he followed precise steps, improvising where Lyrian manuals provided no guidance. After what felt like hours, the device was removed safely. He held it in his hands, examining the crude markings. Not Lyrian, he murmured. Someone brought this aboard, and they know exactly what they're doing. That night, he told Lyra what he had found. They met in the observation deck, the stars streaking past the transparent walls. They're already inside, he said. They're hiding among the crew. They know the ship better than we do. And they're patient, waiting for the right moment. Lyra's face was pale but determined. We must act carefully. We cannot trust anyone fully. But you see what others cannot. That is why I rely on you, Ethan nodded. Then we stop them, somehow. Lyra's eyes softened. It is not just a threat to the ship. It is a threat to me, to the Empire, and you are already part of this, whether you like it or not. The first real confrontation came unexpectedly. Ethan was inspecting the engine room late at night when he heard footsteps echoing behind him. He turned, tools in hand, and saw a shadow move across the corridor. Hello? He called, his voice steady despite the adrenaline in his veins. No answer, only the soft hum of machinery. Then suddenly a hand grabbed his shoulder. Ethan spun, swinging his tool instinctively, but froze when he saw who it was. A Lyrian officer, one he had trusted until now. You should not be here, the officer said coldly. Princess Lyra does not need your interference. Ethan's mind raced. He had to act fast. The officer lunged at the main panel, wires sparking as he tried to tamper with the engine. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed a loose cable and yanked it, tripping the officer and sending him sprawling. Sparks flew. Smoke hissed. Stay down, Ethan shouted, pressing a hand against the officer's chest to keep him from reaching the controls. The officer struggled, but Ethan's grip held. He was human, yes, but humans had endurance and unpredictability, qualities the Lyrian could not anticipate. With one final push, Ethan forced the officer back toward the bulkhead and held him there until reinforcements arrived. When Lyra and her guards entered moments later, Ethan stepped back, breathing hard. He was trying to sabotage the engines, he explained. Lyra's gaze was fierce. You saved the ship, and perhaps the Empire. Your courage, it is unlike any I have seen. Ethan shrugged, exhausted. Just doing what needs to be done. The revelation of the saboteur confirmed what Ethan had suspected. The threat within the Empire was real, and it extended far beyond this ship. Lyra explained that some nobles sought to remove her from power entirely, using whatever means necessary. Sabotage, manipulation, and even hired mercenaries. We must prepare, she said. We cannot rely on protocol or procedure alone. We need ingenuity. You are our advantage, Ethan nodded. Then we improvise. Humans survive in chaos. That's what we do. For the next several days, Ethan worked tirelessly, inspecting every system, repairing sabotage and fortifying weak points. He and Lyra devised secret signals, hidden routes, and contingency plans for escape or defense. The bond between them strengthened, built not only on trust but on the shared responsibility of survival. Then came the night the traitors struck again. The ship's alarm screamed, lights flashing red. Life support faltered. A loud explosion rocked the hull. Ethan bolted from his cabin, tools in hand, and raced toward the engine room. The corridors were filled with smoke and the sound of hurried footsteps. Crew members shouted orders, some panicking. Ethan pushed forward, relying on his instincts rather than any manual. He reached the engine room and found multiple officers attempting to tamper with critical systems. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the room was thick with smoke. Without hesitation, Ethan sprang into action. He moved quickly between panels, disconnecting sabotage circuits, rerouting power, and improvising emergency solutions. The Lyrian officers were skilled but rigid. They hesitated, following procedure instead of acting. Ethan acted instinctively, trusting his human adaptability. Divert auxiliary power to the shields, he shouted. Seal the compartments now. Lyra arrived moments later, issuing clear, commanding orders. Together they worked in sync, a combination of human improvisation and Lyrian precision. The saboteurs, realizing they were being outmaneuvered, tried to flee. Ethan and Lyra pursued, cornering them in the maintenance corridors. The confrontation was tense, but Ethan's quick thinking and Lyra's authority forced them to surrender. When it was over, the ship was damaged but functional. The saboteurs were restrained and their devices removed. Lyra approached Ethan, her expression both relieved and grateful. You saved the ship, and my life. Again, I do not know how I can ever repay you. Ethan shook his head. I don't need repayment. I'm just glad we're still flying, Lyra smiled softly. It is more than that. You are extraordinary, Ethan. Not because of your strength or your skill or even your courage, but because you see solutions where others see only problems. You are human. Ethan laughed quietly, exhaustion heavy in his chest. I guess humans do have a few tricks up their sleeves. The events of that night changed the ship forever. The crew, once suspicious, began to view Ethan differently. Some whispered, admiring his ingenuity. Others remained wary, but no one could deny that he had saved the vessel and the princess from a dire threat. Lyra, meanwhile, grew closer to him, not only in trust but in understanding. She saw the value of his perspective, the strength in his unpredictability, and the courage in his heart. One evening, as they stood together in the observation deck, looking at the stars, Lyra spoke quietly. Ethan, you have changed everything. Not just the ship, not just the crew, but me. You have shown me that strength is not only in discipline but in courage, adaptability, and trust. Ethan looked out at the endless stars, thinking of Earth, of his small repair ship, of how he had never imagined ending up here. I never thought I'd be anything important, just fixing ships, surviving space, but maybe this is where I'm meant to be, at least for now. Lyra placed a hand on his arm, a gesture of connection, of partnership. And I'm glad you are here. Not only for the Empire, but for me. You are my human solution, Ethan. The one who acts when others hesitate, who thinks when others panic, and who stays when others flee. Ethan smiled, feeling something he had not felt in a long time. Belonging. Here in the middle of an alien ship surrounded by stars and danger, he was not just a human mechanic. He was a protector, a partner, and a friend. And for the first time he felt ready for whatever the universe would throw at them next. Not waver. It is also necessary. The Empire is vast and threats come from both outside and within. Courage, ingenuity, and adaptability are what save lives. This human demonstrated all three. Ethan could feel the eyes of the council upon him. Some were still skeptical, but others nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in Lyra's words. Very well. the elder said finally. Your actions, human, are recorded. You are recognized as a friend of the throne. You may not hold rank, but your contributions are acknowledged. Ethan blinked, speechless. A title, recognition, something he had never imagined receiving. Lyra reached out, touching his arm lightly. You deserve this, she whispered. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief and pride mingling together. Thank you. Even as recognition came, the ship and its crew were not entirely at peace. The sabotage had been part of a larger conspiracy, and Lyra knew that factions within the Empire would continue plotting. We must remain vigilant, she told Ethan as they walked the palace gardens. The danger is not over, but now we face it together. Ethan nodded. Together, he echoed. I'm not leaving your side. Lyra's expression softened, a rare moment of vulnerability. I am glad. Your presence, it has changed everything for me. Not only my safety, but my fear, my doubts. You quiet them. Ethan looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. This was more than a duty. She trusted him in a way no one else had. And he felt the same. I'm just a human, he said softly. But I'll stay. As long as you need me. You are more than human, she replied. You are my ally, my solution. And perhaps more than I expected. Days passed, and life aboard the ship and in the palace began to settle. The council accepted Ethan's presence, though with careful observation. He continued to assist with engineering and defense, proving invaluable as the Empire prepared for potential future threats. Lyra continued to meet him in quiet moments, sometimes in the palace gardens, sometimes aboard the ship in secret observation decks. Their bond grew stronger, founded on trust, courage, and shared experiences. One evening, as they walked among glowing trees in the palace gardens, Ethan asked softly, Do you ever think about the future? Beyond threats, beyond politics, what we could do? Lyra paused, looking at the stars above the palace towers. I do, she said. I think about a future where we are free to make choices, not just bound by duty, but by what we believe is right. And I think about you. Ethan's heart thumped. He had faced countless dangers, and yet this moment, quiet, calm, full of meaning, was the most intense he had ever experienced. You mean that? He asked. Lyra smiled faintly, reaching out to take his hand. Yes, you are part of my life now, Ethan. Whether the Empire accepts it or not, whether others understand or not, you are irreplaceable. Ethan squeezed her hand gently, feeling a warmth he had never known. I feel the same. I never thought I'd find this. Not in space, not in politics, not anywhere, but here, with you. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden alert from the palace security system. Sensors indicated a small fleet approaching, unidentified and fast. Ethan and Lyra exchanged a glance. It seems the Empire's challenges are not done yet, Ethan said, preparing himself. Lyra nodded. No, but we face them together. And this time, we are ready. They moved to the palace control hub, directing defenses and issuing orders. Ethan's human ingenuity once again became crucial. He rerouted energy to shield weak points, improvised emergency solutions, and guided Lyra through critical decisions. The approaching fleet proved to be a group of mercenaries hired by rebellious nobles. But the palace defenses, combined with Ethan's quick thinking, managed to repel them. The threat was neutralized without loss of life, though the palace had sustained minor damage. When the alert ended, Lyra turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with relief and admiration. You have saved the Empire again, and this time, not just the ship, but all of us. Ethan smiled, exhaustion heavy but satisfying. I just do what I can, and it helps to have someone like you giving me direction. Lyra reached out, brushing her hand against his cheek. You are extraordinary, Ethan. Not because of your skills alone, but because you care, you act, and you trust. That is rare, even among my people. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, deeper than pride. Then I guess, humans do have a place in the stars after all. And you, Lyra said softly, have a place in my life. Always. Weeks passed. The Empire slowly returned to stability. The Council, though wary, acknowledged Ethan's contributions. Lyra's leadership grew stronger, fortified by her experiences and by the trust she placed in her human companion. Ethan continued to assist in engineering and strategy, but more importantly, he and Lyra shared quiet moments, discovering the depth of their bond. Their nights in the observation deck, once a place of secret refuge, now became a symbol of trust, partnership, and mutual respect. One evening, as the twin suns set over the horizon, Lyra turned to Ethan. The stars are endless. Ethan. They stretch farther than any human or Lyrian can imagine, and yet, I do not fear them anymore, not with you beside me. Ethan smiled, taking her hand. Then we keep moving forward, together, no matter what the stars hold. Lyra nodded. Together, always. And for the first time since his small repair ship had failed in the Orion trade route, Ethan felt a sense of belonging, purpose, and hope. He was no longer just a human aboard an alien ship. He was part of something greater, a protector, a partner, and a friend to the princess of the Lyrian Empire. And in the vast, endless expanse of space, that was more than enough.